What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have yet another album review for you, and one that I've been anticipating for a while because, well, I'm a longtime fan of this band, and it has been nearly 20 years since this band's last full length. So today we are going to go over the latest offering from the Hope Conspiracy, Tools of Oppression, Rule by Deception. This also comes out on the 31st of May on Death Wish Records. This band formed in 1999 in Boston, Massachusetts, part of the whole, New England hardcore and metalcore scene out there, which I definitely was a huge fan of, and, still to a degree am. This is their fourth full-length overall. It has been, again, almost 20 years since 2006's Death Knows Your Name, which I thought was an absolute banger. It's literally as cool as this album cover up here. Like, look at that thing. That's awesome. I've been a fan of this band since their debut, Cold Blue, though, and I would just describe this band as straight-up hardcore. Debatably metallic hardcore, though I think their roots kind of lie a little bit closer to the punk side of things. Very old school. These guys are veterans of the scene, and even in their absence, they've stayed busy. At least their frontman, Kevin Baker, has with All Pigs Must Die, which it's been a while since their last album, too. Hopefully this is a catalyst to get that band moving again, too. I've been a fan of them since God is War, which is just a fantastic debut. But I always wondered what happened to this band, because I don't think they officially ever broke up. They just sort of I don't know, kind of quit making music for a while. Then last year they put out their Confusion, Chaos, Misery EP, which actually features one track that's on here. And I was like, wow, where have you guys been? So I started checking out singles, and I mean, honestly, this might be one of their heaviest and most visceral albums in a while. This album really feels like there is nearly 20 years of hostility and contempt sort of packed into this little over a half an hour listen, and it is flat out crushing pretty much from start to finish. Most of this is very fast-paced, very explosive, lots of D beats and heavy punky chugging. Kevin has not lost a step at all in his vocals. In fact, I would say there's some carryover energy from All Pigs Must Die on here. The album kicks off with an absolute bruiser, Those Who Gave Us Yesterday. There's a really cool, atmospheric hum to start, and then you get this nasty riff that comes in, and it's just an instant hook. And it doesn't necessarily start off like I think it would with, just a fast D-beat sort of just pit spinner. It's more of a mid-tempo chug-a-thon with a great descending riff. There's heavy floor toms all over this song. There's heavy floor toms all over this album, and a lot of big hardcore build-ups where you isolate a yell or isolate a riff and kind of do that slow build-up on the floor toms into a giant heavy breakdown or a D-beat. Take your pick. They're both on here. But while there are other more mid-tempo songs in here, a lot of this is just very fast-paced and just very DB driven. Songs like Live in Fear, A Struggle for Power, The West is Dead, all just come hammering in with these giant D beats, down-picked riffs, and just outright explosive hostility. And a lot of this just sort of touches on what I like in hardcore. Actually, a lot of this has a big sort of nostalgic feel for me. This reminds me of when I got into hardcore with bands like Integrity and Strife, and even Sick of It All. And despite this band being older, there's still a lot of just youthful energy to this. It's very explosive. There's nothing on here that I would say sounds like it is waning in energy. Lyrically and thematically, this is full of piss and vinegar. It's a commentary on life now, which, believe me, there's so many different avenues to go down to why life is just sort of, I don't know, a very unpredictable, messy thing right now. But regardless of whatever shitty back alley they go down in terms of life's many avenues, they approach it head on and with just absolute contempt and ferocity. And musically, I think that is magnified by the fact that this is mixed by Kurt Ballou. Kurt Ballou knows how to do this stuff. I mean, Kurt Ballou knows how to do a lot of stuff, and honestly, whenever I see him listed in the production, I get a little bit giddy because I just love the sound of his production. The guitars are thick, they're meaty, the drums absolutely pummel you. It's gritty but well mixed. It still has the texture of sandpaper on your eardrums, but it's in a good way. And with his production on here, these riffs pack an extra punch. In fact, I would say a lot of this is very comparable to Terror. Albeit they don't quite have those more metallic beat-down breakdowns on here, there is still an intensity on here that is very comparable. As I said, I don't know if I would call this metallic hardcore. It is very debatable. A lot of the riffs on here definitely have more of a punk backbone. There's a lot of heavy down-picking, D-beat, there's some crustier notes on here. And while it does have some more metallic moments where they kind of really break down and chug, a lot of this leans heavier towards the punk side of things. Even when it comes down to like the leads and the harmonies on here, which are kind of few and far between, but the leads don't necessarily have a metallic feel. They kind of feel like a quick punk lead for the most part. I will say that in some of the more mid-tempo songs, like namely the opening track Those Who Gave Us Yesterday, Shock by Shock, and Of a Dying Nation, there's definitely like a little bit of like a kind of death and roll sort of vibe to it. Like, yeah, maybe not death and roll, but it kind of has like a little bit of like that entombed sleaze that you could find on Wolverine Blues or Uprising. They're still angsty and, very biting, but at the same time, there's like a little bit of a rock swagger to them, especially on Shock by Shock. There's a cool slide in the main riff on there that kind of gives it, again, like kind of a sludgy death and roll sort of vibe. That track is definitely more brooding than it is explosive. Like, it doesn't come right out of the gate and punch you in the face. Like, it's kind of looking at you across the bar like, you know what? I'm probably gonna fight this dude later. But that song took like a really interesting turn with its tribal drum break. Like, there's a long drawn out tribal section on there that kind of builds up the energy. Like, they kind of escape the standard trope of like just doing that floor tom sort of beat down and kind of just like revving it up before the singer yells out something that inspires the crowd to throw a chair. There's a lot of feedback and noise, and I mean, honestly, some of it kind of reminds me a little bit more of post-hardcore, and a couple of those moments do pop up a little bit later, especially in the last track, The Spectre Looms, which has an awesome build-up towards the end. Like, everything drops out from the giant D-beat rager that it starts off as, and that song is just absolutely intense. But then you get this kind of like interesting break where the vocals start sounding like they're getting more distant from the microphone. And then there's this very catchy melody that comes in and it kind of builds up on that and then just stomps right back into the D beat. Even Of a Dying Nation has like a more post-hardcore sort of build-up where it's a little bit more lush and atmospheric versus just being biting and snarling and trying to hit you the entire time. I thought those elements were really cool. They kind of open up the songs a little bit and they kind of make the song building a little less just kind of like on the nose in terms of like old school hardcore. There are tons of moments on here where they just do like a lot of the big hardcore transitions. Again, floor toms, isolated shouts, introducing a riff that's isolated, or just stomping in with like a breakdown. Now, that aspect didn't always work though. The West is Dead, while I think that song's pretty solid, like it's another solid D-beat ripper, there is a long atmospheric build-up section which really stretches out too long for a song that is just a little bit over 3 minutes. I just feel like it takes way too long to get to that closing riff, and by the time you get to that closing riff, it's not like the biggest payoff. It's decent, but you'd figure after listening to this, long buildup, you get more of a payoff, and yeah, it's really not there. And there are some other issues I have on this. While this is very much a straight ahead attack, and it's just kind of like on target in terms of like just what they do, I do think it kind of slips into cruise control a little bit. The last 4 tracks in here are all D-beat ragers, and while I really love that, I like the fact that the front half had a little bit more variety and it broke up those songs. These 4 songs being so close together, they kind of end up running into one another. Out of those last 4, I think The Spectre Looms is probably the big standout. It's just a gnarly, vicious closer. But the other songs, I think, are just kind of decent. Like Broken Vessels is a good song, but I think it's so bare bones that it really doesn't go much of any place. And before the long build-up on The West is Dead, there's some really good double time drums, which double bass stuff really doesn't show up very much. Like, a lot of this I feel like could have been done with a single kick, which is totally awesome. I like that in hardcore too. But the issue is that I think a lot of these songs towards the end are just entirely too similar to be back to back to back to back. I also have to say that in this band's absence, I've listened to a lot of All Pigs Must Die, and that has become kind of a standard in terms of the style of hardcore. And while I still really enjoy this and feel like there is some carryover to this, I feel like these songs don't quite have the punch of that band, and that's mostly just because I've been listening to that band for so long, and I don't know, I've kind of like fallen off of the Hope Conspiracy for a number of years, if only just because they haven't put out anything in a while. It's been a while since I've actually gone back and listened to the earlier albums. I think this album kind of falls in that, argument about comeback albums, in terms of like, all right, we've been gone for so long, what do we do? Do we come out with something that is, wildly different, kind of rebranding ourselves and trying to champion a new sound, or do we put out something that is definitely for the fans, like the ones that just want to hear that old sound again, And I think they kind of leaned more towards the latter there, which honestly I think is kind of the right move. It is a safer move, but I think you want to just remind people why they really love this band in the first place and show them you can still do it. I just think there's still a couple of kinks to hammer out, but overall I think this is a pretty solid album. It's just a straight up vicious, old school hardcore album. It doesn't mince words, it doesn't pull any punches really, and I mean that's honestly kind of what I want out of my hardcore. So overall I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. This was an enjoyable listen. They sound fired up and vicious again. I will say that, you know, towards the end it does kind of feel like they kind of get locked into one particular sound and maybe mixing up the tracks a little bit. Probably would have broken that up a bit, but overall this is how I like my hardcore. I like it fast, vicious, and again, I don't know if I would call this one necessarily more metallic. It's debatable, I guess, because again, I hear more punk riffs than I do metal riffs on here, but either way, it's heavy, it's done with a lot of intensity. Kurt Ballew's production's absolutely perfect for this band, and pretty much if you love bands like Strife, Converge, Integrity, Sick of It All, stuff like that, you are probably going to really dig this one. And again, I kind of hope this maybe kind of nudges All Pigs Must Die to get in the studio and record something new too. But yeah, if you're a hardcore fan, I'm pretty sure you're going to find some stuff on here that you like. And if you're a longtime Hope Conspiracy fan, I'm pretty sure you're going to really dig this one because, yeah, this is just a snarling beast of an album, and you should check it out. So if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below at thrallsmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel up in the bottom right-hand corner of our banner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats too, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below. And of course, thank you guys so much for all the support and everything. Again, we're going to do a recap on Maryland Deathfest over on Future Ruins channel, I believe on the 15th. Lots of stories to tell, lots of bands to talk about. I believe our grand total of bands we saw this year was like 42. So yeah, it was probably the most productive year in terms of like going to see bands I think we've had yet. And again, one of my favorite takeaways from that was running into a lot of fans that came up and talked to us. You guys are absolutely amazing, and again, you guys keep us going. Tons of stuff in the future. Meshuggah ranking this month, hopefully, if everything lines up. I also have a couple of other things that I've been working on too that eventually will see the light of day too. So yeah, just stay tuned to the channel. And of course, one more big thank you because you all rule, and we will catch you later.